The massive economic meltdown in 2023, what they're now saying, and the dire predictions. I have all the details and what you need to know right here in the video, so let's get right into it. Alright, some new announcements have come out recently in regards to the economic contraction, the recession, and the massive economic meltdown predicted in 2023. Well, that's what I want to bring to your attention here in this video because they've been talking about this for a very long time, and now that we're in 2023, the predictions are really coming out saying 2023 is going to be the year of reckoning, and it is not going to be a pretty situation. What we've seen so far as the economic contraction is just the start, and there is a lot more to come. And again, I want to talk you through those details here in this video because we need to pay attention to what is going on, because all of this is going to impact us in some way, shape, or form. And this situation that we're dealing with right here, right now, is going to be no different than what we've seen with all of the previous economic contractions over the last several decades. And it's not going to be any different this time, but rather it's just going to be the same old thing that we've always seen play out. But again, the catalyst will likely be a little bit different. And again, the excuses, just like every time, will probably be different. But again, it'll be the same old picture played out one more time. So I quickly want to talk through some of the predictions that are coming out right now by some high-profile people and what they're now suggesting for 2023. All right, so number one, there was just an interview a couple days ago talking about a Category 5 economic storm here in the United States. Now, we all understand all of this, right? Now, maybe we're not experts when it comes down to the different categories with storms and stuff like that, but I think we all probably recognize a Category 5 storm on the economic front is not a good picture. Well, here's what these predictions are actually coming in at. They're suggesting that many of these big tech firms out there right now have not even torn the Band-Aid off of this whole situation, and they're predicting that massive layoffs are still to come. In fact, they're predicting 2 million jobs will be lost here in 2023 alone, right? That's a lot of people. But remember, back in early 2020 when the whole COVID thing started, there were like 40 million people that were unemployed. However, that was a totally different situation. A lot of different industries, a lot of different things that were completely closed down at that time. However, this is going to be a different recession in the form of it's not necessarily going to cause massive closures and shutdowns across the board like what we saw in early 2020, but rather this is just going to be a run-of-the-mill type of situation and a run-of-the-mill recession and economic contraction when it comes down to this time, right? But they're actually predicting that many of these big tech firms and a lot of the companies out there right now have not even gone forward with all of the massive layoffs that are actually set to come. 2 million people apparently going to be losing jobs this year alone. So here's what else is interesting. 2022, now that obviously it's closed up, it's in the books, it's all history at this point, was the worst year for the stock market since 2008. Well, do we all remember what happened in 2008? Yeah, the subprime massive collapse in the markets because of the because of the real estate market collapsing onto itself, and the whole situation took the whole house of cards down. Remember, that was in 2008, early 2009 when that whole situation played out, right? So, is that maybe a little bit of an indication as to what is to come in 2023? Now, obviously, we can't just look at one metric. We can't just say, well, the stock market in 2022 was the worst since 2008, therefore we're going to see a huge collapse. Well, history does repeat itself, even though they say, oh no, history doesn't repeat itself. Yeah, it does. Look at history. Look at anything in history. It all repeats itself. It's the same old ebb and flow. It's the same old cycles time and time again. We see the same things play out. But like I said earlier, the catalyst and the excuses are different every time. But seriously, the cycles play out time and time again, right? So it'll be interesting to watch this whole one play out. But that's what it comes down to. And again, that's another metric that we want to watch here because 2022 was a very weak year when it came down to stocks. Even though the year started out pretty strong, the second half of the year was not a good one when it came down to the stock market. And so far in 2023, it's not really doing that well either, right? But we'll have to continue watching all this and see what happens going forward. Now also, Michael Burry. We've talked about him a couple times here on the channel, not a ton, but if you're somebody that watches any of this stuff, you probably heard the name Michael Burry floating around, or if you've happened to read the book and or watch the movie, The Big Short, well, that was all predicated on some predictions out of Michael Burry. Well, here's what it comes down to. Michael Burry was basically one of the first investors to basically short a bunch, basically like short the housing market essentially way back in 2008 when this whole thing started to unravel many years ago, and made a boatload of money as a result of it because he saw the major collapse that was coming in. Well, a lot of times, a lot of people turn to Michael Burry to wonder what's going on here, because apparently he has this gift of being able to predict what is going on with the economy as well as what's going on with the markets and things like this. And he has said recently in some tweets that the United States economy is in a recession by any definition. Okay, so yeah, I think this isn't any surprise to anybody right now that the United States economy is definitely 100% contracting. We already know this, but everybody has their own different definitions of a recession. And basically in 2022, we did see 2 back-to-back quarters of negative GDP. Technically, that was a recession at that time. But again, depending on who you ask at that time, a lot of people were saying, oh no, we're not in a recession. That's just, the classic textbook example. Okay, then I guess where are we supposed to go for definitions if it's not a textbook, right? But anyway, it seems like the definition of a recession seems to change all the time. But what do we know, right? But anyway, we'll have to continue watching this year in 2023. But a couple of things that we need to watch as well, and this was also very interesting, that was cited by Michael Burry and his tweets, as well as followed up by many other high-profile people, which is the United States is basically going to go through the same old cycle that we've seen. The Federal Reserve in 2022 aggressively raised interest rates. Okay, during 2022, it didn't really seem like a big deal. However, they're saying all of those aggressive interest rate hikes in 2022 are all going to be felt here in 2023. So, and here's what they're suggesting. Long story short, they're basically saying this much. The Federal Reserve came in 2022 aggressively raising interest rates to lower inflation. We all know that inflation was very, very high, 8+%, and even topping out at 9.1% in June of 2022. The Federal Reserve stepped in, aggressively raising interest rates to bring that inflation down. Well, as a result of that, we get to feel the effects of all these interest rate hikes here in 2023. So here's what they're suggesting. The aggressive interest rate hikes out of the Federal Reserve is going to essentially collapse the economy, right? It's like a boa constrictor. They're constricting on the economy, and eventually, well, you know how that goes, right? I don't need to explain that, but you know the drill, right? So essentially the Federal Reserve is like a big boa constrictor. They're constricting on the economy, and boom, eventually this thing's going to come down, right? Well, as a result of that, they're suggesting it's going to bring all this, it's going to bring the economy down. It's going to overcompensate on inflation, and therefore the economy will come down. Therefore, the economy will contract too much. The Federal Reserve will come back in, start printing a whole bunch of money like they do every single time, which they call stimulus, or maybe they call something like quantitative easing times, 500. Quantitative easing, they have all these different names. Operation Twist. They give them all these different names over the years, but essentially it's literally the exact same thing. A fancy, very highly educated, very smart way of saying we're going to print up a bunch of money. That's all they basically do. It's just a different name for the same old thing. Printing money. Why can't they just say what it is? It's literally just printing money. So the Federal Reserve will step in, they'll print a bunch of money, they'll call it quantitative easing, or they'll come up with some new fancy name and they'll print up a bunch of money, hundreds of billions, maybe even trillions of dollars, and again, they'll reinflate the bubble. Same old thing that happens every single time. We saw it happen, basically through all these cycles. Every time the economy goes into a recession, every time that the economy falls into a contraction, they do the same thing. They print up tons and tons of money, they push it out into the economy, they reinflate the bubble, and we go through the cycle over and over and over again, and this will be no exception to the rule. So, and that's exactly what they're pointing out in these tweets. Michael Burry and other high-profile people, they're saying same old thing will happen, recession, Fed will print a bunch of money, stimulate, and boom, there we go, off to the races again. Reinflate the, basically the phony bubble is pretty much what it comes down to, because it's not real economic growth. It is basically just money being printed and pushed out in there and just pumping up a bubble. Same old thing that we've seen every single time. It is not real economic growth, right? So what we need to really sustain the economy in this country is a real economic boom, not some, inflated bubble based on printing money, right? Anybody can print money. Well, I guess anybody can, but legally the Federal Reserve can, or they can manufacture or bring up money, right? So yeah, long story short, this is what it comes down to, and they're suggesting 2023 will be the wrecking ball. 2023 will be the meltdown. 2023 is the year of reckoning. So we're still relatively early here in the year. We will see what happens here, but if all of these predictions actually come true, then we can anticipate the same old things that happen every single time. A time where the economy contracts in a big way, consumers cut back on spending, businesses cut back on spending, businesses cut back on employment, they start cutting a lot of jobs, the unemployment rate will go up, the Federal Reserve will step in and stimulate, the Congress will come in and pass massive hundreds of billions of dollars or even trillions of dollars of packages, as in stimulus packages. They will re-stimulate, and again, they will print up tons and tons of money and push it out, and maybe the American people will get a little sliver of that pie. Again, I'll continue watching all of it very closely, and I'll break it all down for you here in these videos. Either way, I'm going to leave it at that for now. I could sit here and go on and on and on for a very long time, probably longer than anybody cares to listen, but this is the situation, and this is what's going on, and unfortunately, there is nothing we can do about it. We've literally got to be the audience. We literally sit here and watch the circus play out on stage, and hopefully they make the right decisions, right? But again, I can tell you this much, they're not going to, because they never do. But either way, I'll continue to be here for you to help you out in any way that I can, as well as to break it all down into these short videos, to give you the updates, let you know what's going on, and of course, anything showing up right now that we can possibly grab and or take advantage of. So again, please subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, share the video with your friends, family, and social media, and go back and check out any of the other thousands and thousands of videos here on the channel. Of course, as I do get more details on anything going on right now, I will bring it to you right away in these videos, and again, right here on the channel. So again, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Enjoy your day, and I'll catch you again later in the next video.